this is David Kroll from Mortgage Network, and I'm introducing Money Matters, our show that tries to take world and global economic events, nationalize them, and then localize them. So that's my mission this morning. This is the last taping of the year. Today is Friday the 30th of December, and the year is coming to an end. Interesting year it's been. So what I'm going to do in my segment here is to try to put a cap on what's happened in the last year, give you a sort of summary of what's happened in the last year in world economic events, and to give my most humble forecast for what might happen in the next year. So first, the summary. What we've seen in the last year is an end, finally, to the weak equity markets and the very, very strong bond markets that have led finally to the beginning of an economic recovery that seems to have some steam in it. Over the course of the last year, there's been steady job growth in the United States, about 188,000 jobs per month on average throughout the year. We've ended the year with unemployment at a post-recession low. So it's the lowest that it's been at any time since prior to the recession, to the Great Recession of 2008. Our unemployment is currently at 4.6%. And putting aside all of the intricacies and arguments about the total global employment of adult persons in the United States versus those who are non-productive or unemployed, that 4.6 number is a very important one. We also are heading at the end of 2016 toward a all-time high in the stock market. We've been flirting for the last 3 or 4 weeks with the stock market hitting, with the Dow hitting 20,000. It hasn't done so. It's come up close and backed off, come up close again and backed off. This last trading day of the year has started off strong, but it does not appear that we will break 20,000 for the year, but very close. So it's a record stock market. It's also a bond market which has absolutely tumbled in the last, 50 days, 55 days since the election. The bond market has absolutely tumbled. So 10-year treasuries carried an interest rate on November 7th of, I think, 1.7%. Today, coming into this morning, they were at 2.58% or 2.6%. Doesn't sound like a big change to those of you who are listening. I mean, what's 1.7, 2.6? What's that between friends? Well, what it is 0.9% divided by 1.7. It's very nearly 54% increase in the interest rate on the 10-year bond, 54% increase. So that is a very, very, very significant event, and one that is, as we complete 2016, that holds an enormous amount of power, which we'll talk about a little later, for what happens in 2017. Another big change throughout 2016, ending up at the end of 2016, is a political one. In our country, we've had an election that has brought a inexperienced populist to power in Donald Trump, and a very, very similar movement is occurring in several countries in Europe. We are seeing a rise of populism primarily due to the striation of incomes, due to the fact that a very, very large segment of the population here and in other developed economies have been left behind. In other words, they've not been economic participants in the growth of the world economy as it's become a world economy and as it's become more technologically sophisticated. More and more of the jobs that were once the foundation of the middle class have been either evaporated altogether or have been transported to low-cost labor markets, and this is a phenomenon that exists throughout developed economies. So you see this phenomenon occurring not just in the United States, but also in Britain, also in Germany, also in France, Spain, throughout the developed economies. So everybody's feeling the same awkwardness at the end of 2016. An economy that is a world economy that has left behind a lot of the a big section of the middle class population. So the hue and cry is very similar wherever you go in the world today. So we'll see in the second segment, we'll see what happens in 2017. We'll give you a forecast. Another one of the big changes is that at the end of 2016, we've seen a rapid rise, a great deal of consumer confidence. Consumer confidence index has gone up since the election enormously. The consumer confidence indicator in the United States is a very interesting indicator, and it's not based, of course, on fact. It's based on expectation. It's based on optimism versus pessimism. Consumers are very optimistic about the direction of the economy, and that usually translates to a willingness to spend money. But you can only spend money if you've got money, and incomes have risen very modestly. They have risen, but they've risen very, very modestly at the end of 2016. What has begun to rise again, if you haven't got money, you can't spend it, right? So what's the other source of money? You can borrow it. And what's the source for consumer purchases? Credit cards. Total credit cards outstanding at the end of 2016 are at the highest level of at any time since the pre-recession days. So if you look at the chart, x-axis, y-axis, total credit cards outstanding goes like this until 2008, drops like this, like a stone in the recession, and then starts back up again as we move toward 2016. In December of 2016, we are at pre-recession levels. We have reached, as a total credit card volume, a pre-recession level. Now, that's particularly interesting as a forecast for the future, because that money doesn't come cheap. It's money that's hard to pay back, and it's particularly hard to pay back if incomes are relatively flat, if incomes are not increasing at anything like a hot clip. So consumer confidence, consumer optimism leads to consumer spending. Consumer spending has to be generated from somewhere. In this case, it appears that a great deal of the consumer spending is coming from a renewed burst of credit cards. The final thing that we're looking forward to or we're not looking forward to, we're witnessing in the close of 2016 is some very interesting developments both in Russia and in China. Russia stands to be in a very bad pickle if the cost of debt, the cost of money increases, because Russia is carrying an enormous debt, and its economy cannot support it. It's an oil-based, energy-based economy, and if oil prices are not strong, Russia can't pay its debt. So there's going to be a reckoning based on the numbers at the end of 2016. Russia will have a tough time paying its debt. China, on the other hand, will simply keep getting stronger. As of the end of 2016, the Chinese economy remains strong, although not at quite the level that it was, and it does look as if things are going to be perfectly okay there. So in the second half, we'll look at projections for 2017.